buy this 2017 Shelby GT350. The car was Oxford white and it had some nice stripes on it. They were actually a light blue. They look gray in the pictures, but they are actually a light blue color. The car only had 5,000 miles on it and it was in Illinois. So this car was on eBay is where he found it, and it had a salvage title. So there was a lot of ideas of where the salvage title came from because the car looked really good and you couldn't really see any damage to the car. Looking underneath the engine bay, the engine looked wonderful. There, clean, low mileage, all there. The strut tower brace, everything was there. And the car had some documentation. It had the window sticker, and on the window sticker it showed the options that came with it. Really didn't have any options on there much. It was one of the lower priced Shelbys out there. The interior was really nice, and it did have the Recaro seats in it, so that was an option that it came with. So looking at the interior, of course, with a 5,000 mile car, it looked really nice. Everything looked to be in place, and there were theories on why the car had a salvage title. The seller said that it was probably hail damage, and the Carfax was clean. It showed no collision history, but it did show structural damage to the front right undercarriage. And so that was a mystery. Looking underneath the car, the only thing that the seller could find was a spot where it looks like somebody had lifted the car with a jack on the subframe, and that did look to be accurate. So the seller looked all underneath the car, said he couldn't find anything else besides where the jack looked like it had lifted up on the subframe, and it did look like that was the true story, that was the only damage underneath, and he sent pictures of it. And the Carfax also showed that it was at a Ford dealership and it had the front rotors turned and new brake pads. So that was actually kind of interesting because a car with only 5,000 miles needing new brakes would probably mean the car was run pretty hard. It was probably tracked hard, and I have heard that the earlier GT350s had drilled rotors, and I think slotted as well, but at least drilled rotors, and those were known to cut into the brake pads and wear them out earlier. So the later Shelby GT350s came with blank disc rotors, and that was to help them last longer, help the pads last longer, and that was very interesting. So it did have that done to it, but other than that, it was pretty clean. So he had sent pictures of the title. This guy had bought the car at auction. He was a dealer, and he had a picture of the title, and it did have the previous owner's name on it. So my friend was able to get that information and contact the previous owner, and what the previous owner said about the car was amazing. He said he had bought this car for $25,000 and it had no transmission in it. And he said you could sit inside, you could look down through the transmission tunnel, you could see there was nothing there at all. And so he bought it and he took it to Ford, and he had Ford replace the transmission by buying one from a 1,000 mile GT350 that had been completely totaled, and he put everything back together, and it also needed a couple of things which is very interesting. It didn't just need the transmission, it needed the whole harness around the transmission. And the most surprising thing was it needed body work done on the firewall of the car. So this is where the salvage title came from. There was structural damage to the firewall, and this is the picture of the damage. This is the inside of the engine bay. You can see there's no engine in there. Ford had to remove the engine to repair the damage. If you look here where the red arrow is pointing, that's the part that was damaged the most. The mechanic at Ford said it was really a simple fix. He didn't have to add material. He just bent the metal back where it needed to be, welded it, painted it. But having to remove the engine and buy the transmission and the harness and all those things cost $15,000. And that includes labor and parts. And so the second owner of the car did all this work, and then he decided that the car was a little bit too rough for him. It was too much of a race car. He didn't really like it. So he traded it into a Mercedes dealership in Florida, and they're the ones who sold it to this guy at a dealer trade kind of a situation. So the real question is, how did that damage happen to the car? It was very interesting. The Ford tech said that it was most likely from the transmission exploding. Now, that's what I had said as well. I told my friend it looks like they went first, second, third, fourth burst again, running through the gears, tracking the car hard, forced it into first gear, exploded the transmission. Although looking at it, it's really difficult to see how a transmission can blow up and cause that kind of damage. Now, initially I thought maybe the clutch exploded and came through the bell housing and into the firewall area, because I have seen that happen before where it's almost cut someone's foot off and it's just, the disc just went right through the bell housing and into the unibody. But in this case, the damage is in a really weird location. Now that's possible, that's what happened, but the second owner said, if he remembers correctly, the engine was still in the car and it still had the pressure plate and the clutch and everything in there. Now maybe he saw the pressure plate but the clutch had ejected. I have no idea, but there's some really weird damage going on here. Now something also that was weird is in the paperwork, it said something to the extent of transmission missing and damaged from theft. So someone might have possibly damaged the unibody trying to steal the transmission out of this car, which is really hard to believe. But this is the documentation. It's really hard to read, but in the middle paragraph there it says, for customer states damage to firewall and something holes when the transmission stolen. Please check and advise, or something like that. And so that is the official Ford paperwork on the car. So it's very interesting. This car had a very interesting story. Now, my friend had a hard time with this car because he was back and forth whether he wanted to buy it or not. He agreed to buy the car, and so he paid through PayPal. This was all through eBay, and he paid the $1,000 deposit that the seller was asking. But then he found out that that wasn't through eBay and it wasn't protected through eBay the way he wanted it to be. And so he asked for that back, and the seller said, that's fine, you could have the deposit back. You get the plane tickets out here and come see the car, because my friend said he wanted to at least see it before he did the final purchase. And so he said, okay, you get the plane tickets, come out here, see the car, I'll have it for you. So my friend agreed. He bought airline tickets. He even bought me a ticket to go with him to go check the car out. And we were even going to stop by and visit Streetcar Shenanigans. If you know them, they're a really neat shop in Illinois, and they have an awesome YouTube channel as well. And we've talked back and forth a little bit. So I contacted them and said, hey, it'd be a really neat thing to come and see your shop and maybe bring this GT350 in for an oil change, and we could look for metal in the oil or anything like that, because the previous owner did tell my friend that it had a little tapping noise in the engine that he wasn't quite sure about. So we made all those plans, and the guy said, don't worry, the car will be here when you come on Saturday. So my friend then noticed that the car was relisted on eBay again, and so he called the guy and said, hey, what's going on? The car's on eBay again. And he said, oh, don't worry, the car will be here. Don't worry about it. You know, and we just assumed that he was covering himself, putting it back on eBay just in case we didn't show up or if we fell through. So that was all fine and dandy until the Thursday before the flight. We were going to fly out there on a Saturday, and on Thursday the seller sent my friend a screenshot, and it just showed a picture of an auction certification page or something that said Shelby GT350 sold, and it had a price. And so my friend messaged him and said, hey, what's this all about? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, it was out of my hands. It's a dealer trade thing agreement, and the car's gone now. So he backed out and either sold the car out from under my friend, or he just decided he didn't want to deal with my friend. My friend knew too much about the car, was a little too picky. Although my friend didn't even tell him that he knew all of these details about the firewall. The seller had claimed that it was just a salvage title from hail damage. So there really wasn't a reason for him, except for maybe that my friend was very involved and always calling and asking, and maybe the guy just got annoyed. I don't know what the deal was, but I think if my friend bought the plane tickets, showed him the plane tickets, then that man should have held the car for him. Now, something else that happened, which is the little loophole that the salesman jumped through, he told my friend, send me a picture of the cashier's check. And my friend said, okay, it's Saturday, the bank's closed on Saturday, and then Monday was a holiday, so he couldn't go do it Monday. So he said the soonest I could do that is Tuesday. And the guy said, yeah, okay, fine. But my friend did not send him a picture of the cashier's check because they were talking so much. He just assumed that once he showed him the plane tickets that it was over. So the salesman said, you didn't give me a deposit, or you took the deposit back, so there's no more binding agreement there, and you didn't send me the picture of the cashier's check. So um, whatever it is, I think that was a little rude of the salesman to do that. Maybe he made a little extra money doing it this way, but it was just a very interesting story. So that adds to the craziness of this Shelby. So just wanted to share this story. I did a lot with my friend to research this car. My friend's the one who did all the legwork. He found everything out about it. I'm very surprised that he was able to do that. But anyway, just thought I'd share this story, and I have more of these stories of the cars my friend's been looking at. And you wouldn't believe how many GT350s there are that are salvage title cars, because he keeps coming across them all over the place. And one car that he wasn't even looking for, that I'll share a story about, was a clear title car, and then he found out that it had $27,000 to $28,000 worth of repairs done to it, and the car was $500 away from being a salvage title car. So even when he wasn't looking for a salvage title car, he almost bought one. And so we'll get into that story later, but I just wanted to share this. So thanks for watching.